Hello there, and welcome to the I Never Knew podcast, also known as Inc. This show dives into the life experiences of people who have been through it all and have come through the other side stronger, better, and triumphant. Each story is raw, authentic, and, at times, heartbreaking. One thing joins it all together: the fact that the stories can help the listener learn and grow. Hosted by life coach Maureen, she sits down each episode with a new guest who will empower the listener to set out on their self-discovery journey and start to heal. Now you'll be joined by Maureen and her special guest. Please enjoy the show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the newest episode of I Never Knew or Inc. podcast by life coach Maureen. I am Maureen Scanlon, your host. I am a certified life coach, relationship expert, author, podcast host, obviously, and speaker. I am so glad that all of our listeners are here. And as I always say, you know, I only get the most fabulous guests. And today is no exception. And she's gorgeous. If you guys are looking on YouTube, oh my gosh, she's just absolutely adorable, cute as a button. And her story is amazing. I can't wait to get into it. So today I'm talking to Melany Oliver. Melany is a holistic therapist and emotional healing coach who helps women heal deep emotional wounds, stop getting triggered, and to break negative patterns so they can have a deeper connection with themselves, more clarity, joy, and emotional freedom. And I am all about that stuff. She was born in Salvador. I'm going to try to say this right. Bahia, Brazil. Did I say that right?
Yeah.
Okay. But she was raised in Dubai. Her mother is Brazilian and her father is English. And from the outside looking in, you'd say that she had a great upbringing. She went to good schools. Her father provided for the family. And her mother even took them to the ballet 3 times a week. It looked like a happy family, but the truth was she was abused by her mother physically, emotionally, and mentally. And it affected every aspect of her life as an adult. And I really, really can't wait to get into this. So welcome, Melany Oliver. How are you?
I'm very good, Maureen. Thank you so much for having me as a guest. I'm excited to have this conversation.
Me too. And listeners, I have to laugh because Melany, bless her heart, said, "Is there anything you don't want me to say?" Well, if y'all know me, I was like, no, absolutely no. There's nothing I don't want you to say. And that's such a double negative. But that's what I love about our podcast and our guests and our listeners is we all want to connect on a deeper level. And the deeper level is let's share our pain. Let's be vulnerable. Mm-hmm. So Melany, tell us your story. Tell us how it started.
Sure. Yeah. So as you mentioned, I was born in Brazil in Bahia in Salvador. We lived there till I was about 4, 5, and then we moved to Dubai, to the UAE. And then I spent obviously the rest of my life here. I did go to uni in UK, but most of my life I was brought up here in Dubai. So I always, I guess, felt a sense of not belonging, not having, I'm not quite Brazilian, I'm not English, and I'm still on a visa here after 33 years. So that was a big theme for a big part of my life. And as you mentioned, on the outside looking in, I had a good upbringing. My father provided for us. He's a good provider. And even my mother, she cooked for us every day, took me to ballet 3 times a week, went to all our school, events and whatever. So, which is why, when I started healing, I really struggled. And I guess this is where a lot of people struggle, because a lot of clients that I work with as well have the happy childhood, but there's so much layer of emotional manipulation, emotional abuse. I mean, I was physically abused, so you can't deny that. Yeah. And believe it or not, I actually did deny it for many years, because that's obviously what I was programmed and conditioned to do, that I was being hit for my own good, to be disciplined or to be, and that as you mentioned, had a huge impact in my life. I think I was diagnosed with depression when I was about 14, 15.
Wow.
And I started cutting myself. I started smoking, drinking, and just going into all these negative, self-sabotaging patterns. And I really hated myself, like hated myself. And I was on the road to self-destruction, basically. And I couldn't understand why. I couldn't connect the dots. I didn't connect that it was due to the abuse. And even though I started healing, healing, I did all the new agey stuff, the energy healing, the herbal medicine, and all of that. But I wasn't really addressing the actual trauma. I was doing all the fluff, but that's also because that's what I was taught, and being from Bahia, I'm not sure if you know about the culture of Bahia or Brazil at all.
I was going to ask you about that because a lot of people have a religious background here. And I was reading your bio and you were talking about there was a lot of new age stuff. So yeah, share with us.
Yeah.
What is that like in Brazil?
So it was very eclectic. It still is very eclectic. So I was raised Catholic. My mother made us go to like church and all of that, and Catholic school, and do my Holy Communion. But then on the other side as well, like if you go to Bahia, you'll see that there's a lot of African influence. Like so, there's candomblé and a lot of like I'll say like white witchcraft or Wicca or things like that. So, because my grandmother used to take me to see witch doctors, for example, and they'll give me like rituals to do, like you have certain herbs and you have this bath at 6 o'clock and you light a red candle and to this orisha, like these gods. And so, and there's so much of that, like in New Year, you have to jump 7 waves. This may sound a little crazy to some people, but
it's
like
fascinating.
normal there.
Yes, this is so fascinating. It sounds
and like popcorn showers at certain days. There's so many different rituals, but this is what I was exposed to, and it's normal there.
Oh my gosh! Wow.
You can go to the church one day, and the next day you can go to see the witch doctor, and it's like a normal thing.
Yeah, and that sounds very. It sounds really confusing for a teenager. Like, I don't know which way to turn. Like, what do I pick? So, understandably, you were feeling like nothing's fixing this, quote unquote.
Yeah. And also, like, even like God bless them both, my grandmother and my aunt, like when I was feeling depressed, they took me to the spirit center, like the spiritual center. So I went to see a spirit doctor and I got my energy cleansed and all of that. But none of them addressed the trauma,
the root of
and
it.
They were all witnessed. They all witnessed it. Apart from my father, he never witnessed it. But so when I started to heal and look for things myself, naturally, that's in my mind. I thought that was healing.
Yeah.
So I went down the new age path. So all the energy healing, Akashic record, this, EMF, that, quantum, I don't know what, blah blah blah, NLP, hypnotherapy. I did like everything out there. I did, and nothing was working. I had a sense of like relief initially, but then I would just repeat the same pattern, and I still had the desire to, kill myself. Basically, I had a lot of suicidal ideation, and I was still very much into drugs and all of that, and I couldn't understand why.
Yeah.
And after that, I did study. I have a degree in holistic and complementary therapy, so I went down the natural medicine route, and nothing was still working. After all my studies, and I still wasn't feeling better, and I couldn't understand why. Yeah. And then finally, I actually got my voice analyzed. I was that desperate.
Oh wow! How was that?
To see it was incredible. By a guy named John Kelly. I can send you his details.
Yes.
And he was the one that kind of pinned me down and said, and he pinpointed all of my traumas. And he said, you have childhood trauma, unresolved childhood trauma, and you must like forget about everything else. Like this is what you need to focus on. And I took his word. I took, his words, I took it seriously, basically. And from that moment on, I said, okay, this is what I need to do. And then that's when I switched focus to all the traumas that I have been denying for so long. And slowly, little by little, every time I processed a deep trauma and processed my emotions, I noticed that actually I was starting to feel better.
Wow.
And then all of a sudden, like as an effect of my healing, I stopped smoking naturally. I didn't choose, because I tried to stop smoking many times and it just didn't work. But I just didn't want to smoke anymore.
Wow.
And then I didn't want to do drugs anymore. And then I was like, why am I doing this to myself? So I started to see the effects. It was a natural consequence of my healing. It wasn't forced. It wasn't, and that's when I realized, wow, this is the real deal.
Yeah. And
You
it must
know?
have been fine. It must have been that moment for you where it was like, finally, because
Oh my God.
you tried so much. I mean, there was so much family making you go do all of these things. And I mean, you must have been at a point of like, I'm just crazy and this is never going to go away.
Yeah.
And what a relief. I always say it's like when you go to several doctors and specialists and you finally get that diagnosis. It's kind of like, whether it's good or bad, it's still a diagnosis and you can put a name to it or an idea to it of what I can do to fix it now.
Yes. And there was finally hope.
Yes.
Because I always say that I was more lost than when I started my inner journey. And I just started to lose hope that I will ever heal, that I'll be broken for life.
Right? It's like you were doing all of these, and I love. We're going to talk about something that you said in your bio or your interview, and I thought it was so great. It's almost like these emotional addictions, like you said. So we compound. We have this thing, this trauma that's down there. We repress it, and then we pile on smoking, drinking, drugs, eating. Whatever is damaging.
Toxic relationships.
Yes.
Yeah.
On top of that, you've got all these other outside factors of family telling you it's about you. It's something you did, and all these different quote unquote specialists, these doctors and practicing witches and those kind of rituals. I mean, it was just almost like everything was piling on you. Do you feel like finally you kind of broke out and went, okay, get off me, and now I'm sort of free?
Yeah. It was such a relief. Like there is a way, because I thought I'll just be stuck in this black hole of depression and suicidal ideation. It's not I mean, I can speak now lightly and I can laugh about it and I can talk, but I'm telling you, it wasn't very nice when you're in it. And I would have rather not lived, basically. I was getting to that point where like I don't think I can continue living.
Yeah.
If I'm going to continue just being in this dark space all the time. So it was just such a relief. I will say that it was still hard work to do all the trauma stuff. I'm not going to lie. But the fact that I was feeling better every time that I was processing my emotions, that was really the turning point where I kind of ditched everything that I learned at uni. Even though we touched a little bit, we did a little bit of counseling and dynamics of clinical practice and things like that, but it was really focused on holistic and complementary therapy, so natural medicine. But I'm no longer focusing on that. I just obviously focus on emotions. I believe now that emotions is the language of the soul, and it's how we process our experiences, and it's the only way to heal on a soul level permanently. Not just a quick fix or this airy fairy, like permanently. That's what I believe with my whole heart.
I am 100% on board with you, and I follow Abraham Hicks, and that's what she says is just check with your emotions. Your emotions are going to tell you where you are always. And so, and I a lot more about this and have a lot more to say. So the thing that you mentioned in your questionnaire that I absolutely loved was where you were talking about emotional trauma, emotional addictions, and emotional triggers. So let's touch on what all that is. And like you said, this is for you. This is the basis. This is the bottom line. I think in any therapy, life coaching, counseling, holistic, any of it, hypnotherapy, I think you're absolutely right. The bottom baseline foundation is our emotions. So
yeah.
let's explore
Correct.
that.
Yeah. And that's what kind of transcends everything. It's the emotion that stays stuck in your body.
Yeah.
And until it's released, nothing that you do will be effective. Nothing that you do will change anything. And the only way to release that is by feeling.
Yeah.
That's why emotional processing is difficult, because you're processing traumas from like when you're 2, 3, 4, or whenever it was. And some of it was very traumatic. For me personally, I was beaten. And that's obviously not a nice thing to experience. I had a lot of fear, a lot of terror. I was actually terrified of my mother, terrified of her. And I just remember her eyes filled with rage and all of that. And when you are, in a state of trauma and the love is withdrawn, obviously you automatically, go into fear. But what I want to point out here is that you don't have to be beaten to experience that amount of terror, because I've worked with a lot of clients who weren't beaten, but they still had the same sort of fears and things. And what I started to notice and track with clients is that when, let's say, a parent gets angry, love is withdrawn. And love to a child is psychological safety. Yeah. So when you don't have that love, you go immediately into fight or flight, and then you get into survival mode, and you don't know. So that terror of not knowing whether you're going to survive stays with you. And even though I had everything on the outside, I had a roof, I had food, I went to school, but it was the emotional trauma, and obviously, the beatings, but that stayed with me, for the rest of my life. But then what happens is, when you don't heal those traumas, because the emotion is still within you, you attract situations to trigger those emotions. And for me, this is the mechanism of the soul. It's how the soul functions, because the soul wants to release that emotion. Nobody wants to stay suffering with these emotions. And obviously these are our lessons and what have you. So, and in terms of vibration, because you talked about Abraham Hicks, she talks about vibration, doesn't she, as well?
Yeah.
And emotions are vibration. It's not just airy fairy. It's not just it is, you can actually measure it. And that vibration then obviously attracts that situation also to you. And obviously that then triggers you. And for me, I always tell my clients, like, you should be happy that you're triggered. It's showing you what you need to heal. You don't have to look for it.
Yes.
It's pointing at, hey, look, there's an emotion there that's not healed. And for me, what I discovered later on in my journey is that the best time to process emotions is when you're triggered, because you're there, it's raw, and you have access to the wound. Whereas if you just push it and leave it for later, which most people do, what you're actually doing is you're suppressing it.
Yeah.
And you're shutting off awareness to it. But then when you, in the future, you're going to have to dig up those emotions, and it takes a lot of work. So, love your triggers.
Yeah.
Firstly, and work with them.
It's like it's sitting on the surface for you. That's the time to deal with it and ask yourself, what emotion am I feeling and why, as opposed to, like you said, suppressing it. You got to get the shovel out and really do a lot of work to dig in there. And I completely agree with you 1,000,000% on the fact that the law of attraction is wherever you are vibrationally. It's energy. Energy is everywhere and transferred. And I had that same experience. I think what happens is, when you are raised in a family, and in my family, there wasn't physical abuse, but there was a lot of like emotional, and I wouldn't say it was abuse, but it was just, well, maybe I should call it abuse. No, I shouldn't call it abuse, but
manipulation, maybe.
Yeah, it was a lot of, my mother is a OCD and perfectionist, and she had said to me, I wanted perfect kids. And so my level of having to meet perfection, it was impossible. And so, like you said, there wasn't a lot of nurturing and love there. So my thought of love, and I think you can relate really well and help our listeners with this, your normal is, I have to work for this love. I don't just get it freely. So everything in my life is a struggle, because I have to work for this love, and I'm not good enough to just get love. I have to work for it. What do you think?
I was going to say, if you have to work for it, it's not love.
Yes, it's conditional, right?
Yeah, totally. Because love is a gift.
Yeah. Yeah. Unconditional is putting someone else's happiness in front of your own. I would say, even at that, though, I don't even like that description, but it's selflessly loving someone, which is.
And I was just going to add, like, not loving is really when you give a gift or when you do something, but you don't expect anything in return.
Yeah.
You know, and a lot of the times at least I speak for myself, and you just mentioned your family, but we're brought up in these dynamics where we have to, it's like we owe them something.
Yeah.
You know, and I wasn't allowed to even dare to point the finger at my mother of, you know, what she did, because you know, I'm ungrateful. How dare I? She put food on the table. She cooked for me every day, you know, and this is the danger. And I think this is where a lot of people get stuck, and where a lot of people don't heal.
Yeah.
Because they did everything for me. I had everything, but then they dismissed their own trauma. And then in essence, you're just re-traumatizing yourself. You're doing what your parents did to you emotionally, and you're keeping yourself stuck.
It's
because
that
you don't want to point the finger.
Right. That guilt and shame that they instilled is like, don't talk about it. We had, I had a great upbringing on paper as well, but behind the scenes, there wasn't that connection emotionally. And you're not allowed to say anything. I have childhood friends that are like, oh my God, I had no idea, Maureen, what you were going through. And it's like, because we didn't talk about it, because there's a lot of that guilt and shame that then we carry throughout our entire lives until we let go of it and say, I'm not responsible for what these people did. In your story, I think you even had the added factor that you had aunts and grandparents sort of in reinstilling the guilt and shame. Like, we need to get this evil thing out of you. Like it was your, like it was your fault, like you were defective or you have this problem. And so you had this tenfold, I think, of
Totally.
reinstilling. Even if you were trying to heal, you couldn't, because people were reinstilling it once you were trying to clear it out.
Yeah, and that's the classic toxic family dynamics, isn't it?
Yeah.
I am the identified patient.
Right. Exactly. Oh, but I love the emotional. So let's talk about the emotional addictions. Let's talk about that.
So, for example, firstly, your emotional triggers, I will say, I just actually posted about this, are your emotional addictions. And emotional addictions come from trauma. And trauma obviously doesn't have to be physical. It can be something, that you witnessed, or it can be like a constant emotional manipulation or criticism or anything like that. Or maybe your parents neglected you. Maybe there was a lack of something, and that's also traumatic. Like if there's no love, if there's no touch, and that then becomes what you seek. As an adult. So that's why people have, maybe they seek validation all the time, and then that becomes an addiction. So what happens then is, if someone validates you, you feel good. But if they don't, you feel hurt. Or you feel bad, or you get angry. How dare they? Or maybe it's, not validate. How dare they not respect me? Or how dare they not acknowledge me? But the thing is, either one, if you're still seeking that, the wound is still there. You haven't healed it. And this is the problem with emotional addictions. People only become aware of their emotional addictions when they're not met. Because they get triggered or hurt. But if they're met, they think everything's okay until that person stops meeting that addiction. And then they say, oh, they've changed, or how dare they? But actually, the addiction is still the same. Does that make sense?
Oh, I keep saying 100%, 1,000,000%. I'm just, I love this conversation, because yes, coming out of my childhood, I end up getting in this relationship at 18 years old, getting married, getting pregnant. Like I was seeking this thing. He was love bombing, he was giving me so much of this love that I wanted. And then, yes, when it changed, then I wasn't whole anymore. And then I realized, oh my gosh, you don't love me and I have to work harder for this. And I think
Wow.
what you said is wonderful. And then we just keep seeking these toxic relationships because of the void in us, and we need them to fill it because we're not filling it for ourselves or dealing with that emotional trauma. We haven't let it go enough to say, I'm good. I like who I am. I don't need you to validate me. I don't need you to love me. I'm good.
Yeah. And this is why I also don't believe in this whole love language thing.
Really?
I don't believe in it at all. I believe what at least what I see and what I've experienced, like working with clients, is that actually it's all emotional addictions.
Ooh, I love
If
this.
my partner doesn't, I read it so long ago, I can't remember. It's like it's words, it's gifting, it's quality time, or something else. If they don't give me a gift, if they don't say words of affirmation, then they're not meeting my needs. But who says they should meet your needs?
I love that you just said this because I'm a firm believer in love languages. In fact, I'm even giving a
Oh no.
It's okay. It's okay. No, this is good. I want to talk to people who have differing opinions. That's what makes me grow. I am so open to other people's perspectives. So I'm actually doing a speech on how love.
I don't know why that just came to my mind. I just blurted it out.
maybe we'll come to a meeting of the minds, and you help me and I help you. So my speech is on how love languages can help us and hurt us. And
awesome.
Here's the thing. If you're relying on someone to know your love language and to meet it, then it's an addiction.
This is what I see all the time with people, and they're demanding that they meet their love language. And I'm like, who said? Like, this is an addiction. It's an emotional addiction.
However, here's what I think is beneficial of the love language. It is knowing yourself and what makes you feel loved. So, and I have seen this because I'm a relationship coach, and I've seen this a million times, and the love languages works because when a partner figures out how their partner needs to be loved and they meet it, then the conflict goes away. The trust is built, the honesty is there, and the vulnerability increases. So it isn't a matter of you have to do this for me. It's do you want to love me the way I receive love? And do I want to love you the way you receive love? So this is not just for couples. This is for everyone in your life, right? This is, I have a friend,
friends, siblings.
Yes. So I recognize, and she doesn't have to say to me, hey, you need to give me words of affirmation, but in my job in building better connections and relationships with people, my job is to recognize what makes them feel loved. So if I have a friend that speaks often to me and says, I really value your opinion, Maureen, or I love how encouraging you are. You always have positive things to say. I know her love language is words of affirmation. So buying her a gift isn't going to make her feel as loved as me picking up the phone and saying, hey, I'm really proud of you today. Or, hey, you've got this. I just wanted to encourage you. So I think our view of it is the same, where if I need you to fulfill me and validate me, that's not going to work. But if I and you say, hey, I really feel loved when I receive gifts because I know you thought of me, and that really makes me feel loved. It comes from childhood. A lot of it comes from childhood. If things were withheld, words of affirmations were withheld.
Yes.
You might now want these words of affirmation, or you feel good and more loved by these words of affirmation, or it might not even matter to you because you didn't get it. You don't need it.
Yeah. I agree. There's a fine line, though. The way I see it is because you could actually be being their enabler.
Yeah.
If they're still in that need, and then you're preventing them from actually healing. No, I'm not saying don't do that. And especially if you feel of gifting, whatever their love language is, from a place of love, then of course, by all means, do that. But if you're doing it to, the intention needs to be pure, I think, and you need to be careful not to be their enabler, because then they're going to just keep needing that, even if it's I don't know how to put this, but in a good way, or even if you're not doing this, you know, that's my point. Basically, you may be being their enabler, and then they won't heal, from that
Yeah.
wound.
Yeah. And I love that. I do. I appreciate that perspective. I respect that. The thing is if you, for me, what you just said is if it's always coming from a place of love and genuineness and not obligation
Yes.
and enabling, because I get that. I was an enabler of my oldest child, and I'm not, if because the unhealing part is you being codependent. And so,
Yes.
if
Correct. Yeah.
I'm codependent, then I'm going to go over here and I'm going to fix everybody in my life. You know what I mean? And I'm going to shower you with gifts, and I'm going to shower you with words of affirmation, and I'm going to spend a lot of time with you. So that's exactly, I see your view of that is we can't enable people, but if it's coming from a place of just love and genuineness, and you really want to help people in
And
your
you want to
life.
show them your love, then of course,
Yes, in
by
the
all
best
means.
way that they receive it. And I think where we fail at times is, well, I like this, so they must like this. That's the problem. That's where the love languages hurt, and I'll do more of that in I have a summit coming up. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's good. See, I love this. This is why I love these conversations so much. Melanie, thank you so much, because this is what we need in life, in this world, is what's your view? We're in the same field. You and I are in
Yeah.
social work and emotional healing and helping people with mental health care. And you can have a different opinion, and I can have a different opinion, but look how we just met in the middle on the hill with the beautiful tree, and we're planting flowers together. I mean,
Yeah.
that's super cheesy, but but I feel like that's how we should approach anything in life. That's just my little sidebar soapbox speech right here, is we can be open to anything. And I don't think we do that enough in life. I think we just go through with blinders on, this is my belief, and you need to believe what I believe. So that's where we go
Yeah.
wrong.
Totally. Yeah. You have to have an open mind, especially if you're, wanting to heal.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a necessity for self-awareness. I mean, you can't
Totally.
you can't do one without the other. So when you did this healing, I mean, what was the turning point where you said, oh my gosh, I've healed all of this emotional trauma, and now I need to bring this forth into the world, and I need to help others?
So I was already doing that because after uni, I studied holistic and complementary therapies. So I started doing that straight after uni, like aromatherapy. I worked in a clinic, a holistic clinic for a while, managing it, doing the operations management. I started doing energy healing. I became a Reiki practitioner when I was 18. So I
Wow.
started doing Reiki when I was super young, and doing tarot cards and things like that. But so I was already in the field from a young age. And while I was at uni, I was already working in a massage. I was doing massage at the time, aromatherapy, reflex, because I did 1 year of a diploma in holistic and complementary therapies before uni. After uni, I started doing massage and Reiki and things like that. And I did energy healing and all of that for a long time. But then when I started to heal myself emotionally, that's when sort of I started to shift. And actually what was happening was when I was doing the energy healings, I started to track a pattern, and I was noticing who was healing and who was not healing. And I wanted to figure out, what was it that these people were doing, that these people were healing and these people were not. And one thing that I noticed was that the people that were healing, I started to become sensitive to people's emotions throughout the healing. And then the emotions would come up. And after the energy healing, I would tell them what I feel. I feel that you have anger towards your brother. Or, I started to sense things like that. And they would just burst into tears. And then that kind of led into emotional processing work. And then I noticed that some clients, they didn't want to get into that. And I remember very vividly at one client who I got to her heart. She wanted to attract love, and her heart was so blocked, and she had a lot of anger towards her brother and this whole story. And I said to her, you need to forgive your brother. Like there's no love going in. You have so much anger and hatred towards men, essentially. And she turned around to me and she said, no.
Wow.
And in that moment, I just, firstly, I was shocked because I thought everybody wants to heal, right?
Right.
Doesn't everybody? But then I realized not everybody wants to heal. And I also realized that healing is a choice and that forgiveness is a choice. And you can choose not to heal, but then also you have to live with the consequences.
Yeah. And some people don't want to let go of their trauma identity.
No, she was so justified in her anger, and that's when I realized, wow, the people that are healing are the ones that are feeling emotions and processing them and getting angry, and the ones that weren't, they'd refuse to feel their emotions as they come up. And what I noticed is they were using energy healing as a way to bypass their emotions. So they were using the energy healing sessions as a quick fix to feel better, and then they would go off, but then I would be left feeling drained.
Yes.
I couldn't figure it out. But then I figured it out eventually.
Yeah. And then you start getting a little bit choosier about clients. Cause same here. Listeners, if you don't know, it's a psychic gift that, we all have. Everybody has the ability to tune in spiritually. And it's one of the things I believe as certain light workers is there's clairsentience where you feel people. And I realized when I started life coaching, the same thing. I was getting these messages and really just knowing people that I'd never laid eyes on before, but I knew them and I knew their history. Then I did the mediumship and started working more on my connections and finding out their history, their family, people who have passed. And it was, so if you are
the same, how funny.
I know that's why I said I'm relating. I keep saying 1,000,000%, 100%, but I feel you because you are me and I am you. Namaste. I understand it because I've seen it. And you're right. People go to healers thinking it's a magic potion, and it's not a magic potion. It is hard. I sat for 2 years doing a soul journey. I'd never been alone, never not been in a relationship since I was 18 years old. And all of a sudden I was 44 years old, 45 years old. And I'm like sitting at home on my bed crying every night with my dogs, which thank goodness for them. That's why I wrote the books, is they taught me this unconditional love. They loved me. Why didn't I love me? And so doing that 2-year soul journey, and it sucks, guys. It's hard. it is hard and it's ugly.
It's worth it.
It's so worth it. It's ugly crying. It is tissues by the bed. It is journaling. It is meditating. It is seeing things in you don't like.
Yes.
But man, all we can say is the other side of the veil is bright and shiny and good. And do it. Trust that process, because as humans having a human experience, your soul doesn't want the negativity, the repression, the hurt, the pain. It's needed for this life. It's needed for the experience and the expansion and the knowledge and the lessons you asked for, but you don't want to hold on to it. You want to experience it, acknowledge it, let it go, and then move past it. So with that being said, I went on my soapbox a little bit.
Beautiful.
What is your process? How do you help people come from a place where you were, and then you see these big changes in them, in however much time, because it differs with everybody. How do you do it? How do you help them?
So what I have found over the years of, now I'm coaching clients. I don't do energy healing anymore. I've kind of let go of all that old new agey stuff. It's because I've literally just talking, asking questions, but also, like you said, I've developed my sensitivity. I can feel, a lot of the times I can feel their emotions before they can feel it. I can feel their unconscious emotions. Like I'll feel they're angry at, I don't know, still angry at their ex. And they're like, I'm not angry at my ex. And then 4 months later, they're like, I'm angry at my ex.
Right.
Maybe I told you that 4 months ago.
I know. You know what? Being a life coach, 90% of the time in your head, you're like, I said that, 6 months ago, or I said that last week. But sometimes it's the lack of readiness to acknowledge.
And so based on that, I guide them through that. And sometimes I'll test the waters. If they're in immediate denial, like, okay, this is going to take another few months. So, and what I notice is because I've processed a lot of my core emotional wounds, there is it's an empathetic communication. It's like a transference of emotional truth that happens. So I don't have a technique. It's just by talking to them and I guess planting seeds, testing the waters, sharing truths that I feel or questioning them. And based on that, things just come up and they either start crying or they'll have realizations or insights. And it's only, I can take them to the depth that I've gone to myself, obviously not further, but the more that you work on yourself, the deeper that you go and the deeper that you embody these truths. And just by sharing it with them, this transference of truth, emotional truth, that's kind of how I see it. That's how it sort of happens. And one of the things that I do help my clients with that I think it's so important is I help them develop their will. Because in trauma, the first thing that gets shut down is your will.
Yes.
You're not allowed. How dare you have a will, and your will is who you are. Yeah. It's your soul essence. And if you're not allowed to be you, that's why you have all these suicidal ideations, this depression, you're not happy. And so I really help them to develop their will, not willpower, because I see willpower as coming from the wounded ego. You're trying to do it through force. Doesn't work. It's not sustainable. And so I help them develop their will, which comes from your heart. It's not from your head. And it's an emotion based on truth, love, and humility that you just emanate from your heart. And this takes practice, but it's something that I help all my clients do, because I really believe that this journey of healing is about reclaiming your will part of it, a big part of it anyway.
Yeah. Yes. And it's, what I got out of what you just said was just being able to tell ourselves it's okay to want more. It's okay to want more. You're allowed to want more. You're allowed to want the best for yourself. Yeah. You're allowed. And when you've gone through trauma and abuse, you don't believe you're allowed to want things for yourself.
Yes. I mean, I didn't believe I deserved to live.
Yeah.
That was a huge one for me.
Yeah. I remember thinking all the time when I was in a relationship, well, I'm not that lovable. I'm not that worthy of love. So I just have to work a little harder than most people. I think about that now and it blows my mind that I was at that place, but until you clear out that thinking, that limited belief, you really do believe it. And I think a lot of people can relate to that. There was a line from a movie called Pretty Woman. I don't know if you saw Pretty Woman with
a long time ago. I don't remember too much.
Julia Roberts.
Yeah.
And she was saying, he said something to the effect of, you're so amazing. Why don't you believe that? And she said, when you've been told enough that you're not, you start to believe it. And that's really the bottom line of programming.
Yeah.
Is the more you've heard it, seen it, witnessed it, experienced it, the more it's inserted in you. And it takes time to get that out. It doesn't, it's not overnight for sure.
Definitely not overnight.
It
definitely
takes,
not after one energy healing.
Yeah. It takes a lot of will, not willpower, will, like you said. I think that was beautiful. And I want to quote you on that. As we wrap up, tell me what you never knew. And this is why I love, before I I asked you a question and interrupted you, but this podcast, my life coaching, healers like you and I who do this work, I think really the whole point, and I want to say this to listeners, if you listen to all of my guests and you listen to Melany, you'll realize you will get the most out of people who've lived it. It's very hard to sit in front of people who don't get you and who they can have sympathy, but they're not going to have empathy unless they've experienced similar pain and trauma or similar, it doesn't have to be the exact thing. None of us have the same experience, but just listening to you and really resonating with that, I can get someone better because of what I've been through. And so I'd love our listeners to just take that little nugget with them. So what do you know now that there's a ton of things, but
Yeah, there's so much.
I know what stands out for you
right now. What stands out is healing is not about tools or techniques or energy or psychic powers or whatever. Healing is about how much truth can you accept emotionally in your heart.
Yes,
that's it.
Bottom line, just
That
talking,
is it.
getting it out. Feel it. She's saying feel it, people. Just feel it. Yeah,
that's it.
As simple as we can go, right?
It's not complicated. It's not, and feeling is about you having the will to feel it, having the courage to feel those feelings. That's it.
Yeah. And it's interesting because a lot of my clients do want techniques or they do want, methods, and I don't do that stuff. And I, don't get me wrong, I've done tons of psychology courses and I'm accredited in NLP and CBT
and me.
I got all that, but all I do is it's funny, I'll take a course and I'll get like 2 pieces of nuggets out of the course. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm not going to go by the book. And I think that's the evolution of mental health care, is that we're not doing the in the box therapy anymore. And we get to just sit and talk with you and empathize with you and feel you and say, hey, how does this feel? Or what happened here? So I think that's the method. Let's just talk about it. Let's get it out. And then you said the best word that I believe is important: acceptance. Once we just accept it happened, and anything that comes future wise, I can accept, and then I can let it go. I don't have to let anything in and let anything stick. Right.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So I always ask my guests, you're marching downtown in Dubai and there's 100,000 people behind you and there's a big banner and it's blank. What does your banner say about your movement and what you want to see changed in the world?
The first thing that comes to my mind is just feel it.
Just feel it. I love it.
Just feel it.
Just feel it. I'm writing that down. Just feel it. And a little bit further on that. When you want people to just feel it, what are you telling me to just feel?
Your emotions. Because this essentially, life is about experiencing, and you can't experience anything and really embody anything without feeling it.
Yeah. So I'm going to challenge you a little bit here. So say I have a situation with a relative and it's just ongoing and I want to get rid of that. I want to stop the feelings I have of resentment and hurt and anger. And there's something tying us that we have to keep having this relationship. So how do I deal with feeling that emotion and letting it go, even though I have to see this person or talk to them because they affect something in my life?
Firstly, you have to figure out what the top emotion is. Let's say you mentioned anger or frustration. Find out the justification for that anger. Okay. So let's say what they did or what they're doing is unfair, or they don't respect me. That's an emotional addiction that is not met, right? So, okay, I need to feel how much I want people to respect me, or I need to feel how much I want them to acknowledge that I'm right, or whatever that is. Because these top layer emotions that you mentioned are top layer. That's not the root cause, right? Yes. So as long as you keep wanting them, whatever the addiction is or whatever you want them to do, nothing's going to change. And so anger doesn't mean anything unless you know why you're angry. You know, what is the justification, for example, in this case? And then you have to process that justification. For example, in this case, not feeling respected. And that will lead you to the next emotion, which may be fear. fear of maybe nobody respects me, nobody loves me, or whatever the fear is. And the bottom of all wounds is grief, grief. And very often these are related to childhood stuff, that maybe you weren't respected, I don't know, by your mother or your father or whoever at certain points in life. And once you really grieve that at the causal level, they may not necessarily change, but you won't feel angry towards them. They can treat you the same way and you won't react. It won't matter. And actually, what I found on my personal journey, you won't attract that situation. They will naturally either leave your life if they're not willing to change, or you'll be able to have a conversation where it is actually healing and they will hear you, because you're not coming from that anger, that addiction, and already projecting those emotions onto them. Because when you don't feel your emotions and you're stuck in that same emotion, you're not actually processing them. You're living in the emotion.
Wow. That is so helpful. And I hope listeners, you got out of that what I got. And as I watched Melanie explaining this, it's this drill down. It's like, okay, here's the layer, here's the next layer, here's the next layer. And how far do you want to go? You can stop at anger and then you can stop at frustration, but you are absolutely right. If I get down to the bottom root of what's causing my anger after I do those steps in that process, it's me wanting something that I haven't received up to this point that I'm not now giving myself, and I need to give it to myself so I no longer have those emotions.
Yeah. And yes. And what we talked about just a little earlier, accepting that you're not going to get it from this person.
Yeah.
And they don't have to. If you really, I believe that that we're here to learn about love. Like this whole spiritual journey is about us developing in love. That's the real spiritual path. And love doesn't demand anything. Love doesn't expect anything. So just by having a demand of someone or an expectation is actually very unloving towards that person.
You're right.
Because if you truly, truly loved that person, it wouldn't, even if they treated you badly, you wouldn't react that way, because you wouldn't be seeking that from addiction or whatever, or need from that person.
That's
or
true.
Anyone.
That's very, very true when you look at it from that perspective. If you're just looking for it from that specific person, that in itself is your roadblock. And then you got to go past, why am I looking for it from them? And then I got to go deeper. So as Abraham Hicks always says, there is no assertion, there is only attraction. And I agree. That's what you said. It all comes from love, and where you are is what you're going to attract. So beautifully explained. I love that. I love visuals. I'm very, I like analogies, so people can kind of visualize it in their mind. So as we close up, my very last question is always, what is your shameless self-indulgence that you do for self-care?
Oh, really? Wow. Self-indulgence. I have shameless self-indulgence. I've never been asked that before.
I try to be different.
I'm big into supplements. I don't know if that's, into self-care. I have these special electrolytes. I actually can't live without them at the moment. And I've been doing this for at least the last 2 years. I have it in I carry this big water bottle with me.
Yeah.
And in every water bottle, there is electrolytes in it.
I love it. I
can't live without it. It's an addiction, maybe.
But you know what? It makes you feel good, and you're contributing to your health. So I love that. Yeah. What's your mental shameless self-indulgence? What do you do mentally to keep yourself grounded?
So I pray.
Yeah.
Actually, I believe in God. I pray. I pray for planet Earth, for humanity, for my family. I believe that we need love. A lot of people lack it, and I think that that's a lot of what causes all the issues, is that we don't even understand what love is. And we're all stuck in these patterns. So the mental, emotional, and spiritual is prayer. I pray daily, connect with my guides and ask for guidance and things like that. I always pray to ask to help me develop in love, basically.
I love
Yeah.
that. We probably only know a quarter of what love really is, to know what pure innate love. It's hard as a human to grasp with our minds. And I think it's important. I think everybody has a right to believe whatever they want, whatever gets them to a point of hope and helps them to move forward. So whether it's, whatever your belief is, whether it's God or anything, as long as it's for good and as long as it gives you that strength that you need and that hope that you need, I think it's a wonderful thing. I think we always need something to reach out to, and I think it's a beautiful thing. So Melany, thank you so much. What a great talk. I feel
that was awesome.
We got in depth. We got a little bit of differing opinions there. We got some I got some help, with the layers of the process. Our listeners got so much information and relatability to you, that you can come from this place of abuse as a child, all of the traumas. And in Melany's words, just feel it, guys, because that's how you're going to get through. So thank you, Miss Melany, for being on today. Where can people reach out to find you? What is your website, or is there anything you want to share with us?
Sure. My website is just my name, Melany with a Y, -oliver.com. I'm on Instagram. It's the same. It's just melany.oliver.com. I'm on TikTok or Facebook if you're old school.
Did you just call me old?
No, I'm old school.
Because I'm all about.
That's why.
I'm all about the Facebook and the Google. So. All right. So website, and then do you have a practice where people are coming to you for coaching and healing?
Yeah, I do. They can find that on my website, Work With Me, or through any of my other, social media. It all links back to my website. Yeah.
Wonderful. I will make sure that all of those links are up for you, listeners. So if you want to work with Melany, then you'll have an opportunity to find her. She's like me. She's all over social. If you say you can't find us, then you must be living in a hole, because we are everywhere. We're very visual. If you guys would like life coaching, to reach out to me, I'm at Life Coach Maureen. And my books are also available on Amazon. And by the time this podcast comes out, I will have my new online shop, My Dog is Everything Boutique, where it's healthy, holistic food snacks for your dog, as well as fun gifts for them, because we reward dogs with healthy snacks and fun gifts because they deserve it and they are unconditional. So that will be up. My Dog is Everything. I'm sorry, that was mydogiseverything.net is the website for that. So go check that out, listeners. Thank you all. Please do a 5-star review. Please subscribe. Please share this podcast so everybody can see wonderful Melany. And really, let's grow this community, because everyone needs to hear that someone else has been there and that they too can get through it. And as Melany talked about in her story, having that feeling that she didn't want to be here anymore. Anytime we get to that helpless and despair, we definitely want to help each other out. So if you know anyone, please make sure that they are receiving help. Send them to the suicide hotline. Reach out to me. I would love to help in any way I can, so we can help one another raise mental health awareness and just be a better human race and a better planet. So love you all for listening. Thank you, Miss Melany. You're fabulous.
Thank you, Maureen. That was awesome. I loved it.
Thank you for tuning in to the I Never Knew podcast. If you found today's episode inspiring and educational, please be sure to follow, subscribe, and spread the word. The more people that join the Inc. community, the more it can develop and influence others as we work together for a healthier and brighter future. Until next time.